Is it?
Madam Deputy Speaker.
Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of our people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelele ilizwe letu nabantu balo, omesile mkulunga kipondo letu, mkozi sikelele I Afrika, kina abantwana bayo, kokela inkokele zayo, inike ikolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated. Order. Good afternoon, everybody, to all the members of this Parliament, to our guests. Before we proceed, I would like to remind members about some of the logistical arrangements. If a member of this Provincial Parliament elects to participate virtually and not from the chamber, it is the responsibility of the member to ensure that he or she has good quality data connectivity for good quality audio and video and that there are no disturbances. The hybrid system has been functioning well and has been doing so for the past 2 years, and poor audio or video is not attributed to the system, but rather to the quality of data connectivity. Members, please be considered to be out of order by the presiding officer's microphones will be muted and called to order. Our honourable members participating in the sitting of the House via Microsoft Teams make use of the second device if they'd like to access the language services of Parliament. And honourable members are reminded that no interjections are permitted during these hybrid sittings. And in this regard, I draw the attention of honourable members to Rule 40 of our standing rules. I will now ask the Secretary to read the first order of the day.
Introduction and first reading, Western Cape Appropriation Bill B2 2022.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I now recognise the Honourable the Minister Mania.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Order. Honourable members, please, before Minister Mania begins, please do not shout into the microphones. If you have a point of order, you are to put up the raised hand function in order for me to see. Thank you. You may proceed, Minister.
On a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable member, I don't see a raised hand. Who am I actually addressing?
It's Member Kama.
Honourable member Karma, do you know how to raise your hand function? What is your point of order?
I'm actually in the chamber. I don't have it.
My apologies, Honourable Karma.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I would like, Deputy Speaker, in terms of the rules, check if you are in a position to rule that the member Honourable Ricardo Mackenzie be brought to the Standing Committee of Community Safety to answer questions on his involvement in the Fritz saga, which we were just last week.
Thank you. I recognise the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is highly irregular. We are here for the budget speech. There are procedures. If a member has an issue with another one, which is by way of a substantive motion, Honourable Karma is very well aware of this, and this is just a stunt to try and derail the budget speech. And I hope that you will rule accordingly.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Honourable Karma, that wasn't a point of order. I can't entertain any such statements. This is not the time for statements. And as the Chief Whip has correctly said, if you have an issue with a particular member, please put forward a substantive motion. We will now ask the Minister to proceed. Thank you, honourable members.
Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Sayed, have you got a hand? Are you in the House? I recognise you.
Yes, I'm in the House, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I would like the Chief Whip of the ruling party to indicate on what basis Member Kama's intervention is out of order, because I'm also rising, Deputy Speaker, on Rule 3B pertaining to the current proceedings of the House and ask you to rule on the lack of public participation. That's the one. But more importantly, I rise on 3A pertaining to the unparliamentary conduct or behavior on the part of Honourable Mackenzie. He has been on leave and therefore has not been able to answer questions on his involvement and allegations around the Fritz matter in the Standing Committee. The Honourable Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party indicated that he's on leave and hence cannot answer, but we are aware that he is back. So can you please rule that because he's available, he must account before the legislature? Thank you.
Honourable Syed, thank you for your point of order regarding Rule 3. But this is the Western Cape Appropriation Bill and only the bill for today. As I say, whatever you want to do, you may bring that up into the next sitting. If you want to as a substantive motion, that is your right as a member of this provincial parliament. But today, we are only sitting for the own reason of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill by the Minister. So my ruling is now final, honourable members. You have the right to bring a substantive motion forward in the next sitting, whenever that is appropriate, then or when the next sitting is. But today's sitting is specifically for the appropriation bill. I trust now that this matter is closed. That is my final ruling. Thank you very much, honourable members. I'm going to ask the Minister to proceed.
On a point of order, Speaker.
I'm not taking any more points of order, honourable members. It's my final ruling. And as I've said, my point.
Speak on a
ruling
point of
stands.
order. Thank you very much.
Of order. You cannot not take a point of order.
Honourable members, there seems to be a deliberate intervention into trying to stop this appropriation reading today. I really would ask that we stop this and we bring whatever we need to bring into the next sitting. Can I please have who actually asked for a point of order? Apart from Honourable Dugmore, you didn't say point of order.
Is Member Brinkhuis, Speaker?
Member Brinkhuis, what is your point of order? I please hope it's not on the same subject because I've already ruled on that.
Speaker, I would like to ask through you, Speaker, to the House also. Speaker, on what basis did you declare this Western Cape government support for Ukraine in its war with Russia?
Honourable
Without
Brinkhuis.
consulting all political parties, is this a DA Western Cape?
Honourable Brinkhuis, this is not a point of order for
The
today's
DA
briefing.
just can't make decisions. They must consult with other political parties.
Honourable Brinkhuis, again, this is not a point of order relating to this sitting. Please bring these issues to the next sitting, as your right as a member of this provincial legislature. Honourable members, can I proceed? Honourable Minister Mania, I would like to ask you to proceed, please.
Here, here.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Speaker and Deputy Speaker, Honourable Premier and Cabinet Ministers, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Leaders of Opposition parties, Executive Mayors and Deputy Mayors, Honourable Members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, members of the Consular Corps, heads of department, municipal managers, special guests, and of course, most important of all, the people of the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, I would like to begin by paying tribute to a special guest who could not join us today. And that is Michael Spicer, chairperson of Westgrow, who passed away suddenly last week. Michael Spicer led the Westgrow board for almost a decade with passion, with wisdom, with dedication, and with enormous energy. He was a huge champion of keeping things practical and simple, and he was a huge champion of the private sector driving economic growth in the Western Cape. Michael Spicer and I did not always agree, and indeed sometimes we strongly disagreed, which is exactly why he was the perfect chairperson of Westgrow. His last message to me from hospital was, and I quote, "Our chat will have to wait." Well, I'm going to miss our chats, which often took place over a glass of wine, looking out over the magnificent vineyards at his home. And I'm going to miss his wisdom, which he so generously shared with me. So we extend our condolences to his wife and to his family, and we thank him for his service to the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, Let me also say that I am proud to be a member of this provincial parliament, and I'm proud to table the budget in this provincial parliament, because this is the only provincial parliament in our country that has had the courage to take a stand in the face of a terrible war of aggression by swathing itself in blue and yellow in support of the people of Ukraine.
Not academics.
Order, order,
What about Palestine?
order.
Deputy Speaker, as we know, a couple of weeks ago, Premier Alan Winde delivered his State of the Province address in Velddrif, which is the home of Bochums, the home of Rooibos, and the home of the Cederberg here on the West Coast. He reminded us that while the challenges we face are serious and at times can seem overwhelmingly, we must have hope, because we must never forget that we live in a special place with the best healthcare system, the best education system, the best infrastructure, and of course, so much natural beauty. And we live with a special people from all over our country, from all over our continent, and indeed from all over the world, who come here to find a better life in the Western Cape. But above all, he reminded us of the terrible damage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, in which more than 20,000 people have lost their lives, and in which more than 200,000 people have lost their jobs. And then he called on us. He called on us, all of us, to get up, to get out, to push forward, and to do even better in the Western Cape. So, Deputy Speaker, today we table a budget to push forward so that we can get up, so that we can get out, so that we can push forward, and so that we can do even better in the Western Cape. To push forward, we must, of course, sustain the fight against COVID-19. We must support our strategic priorities, including jobs, safety, and well-being. We must protect our frontline services, including education, health and social development. We must improve the composition of expenditure by boosting spending on infrastructure. We must support vulnerable municipalities. We must improve the efficiency of expenditure by improving value for money when it comes to procurement. We must mitigate existing risks, such as drought, fire, and flooding. But we must also mitigate new risks, such as the risk of cyber attacks. And we must ensure the long-term fiscal sustainability of the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, to push forward, we will spend 19.6 billion rand over the medium term on jobs. We will spend 4.4 billion rand over the medium term on safety. We will spend 111.3 billion rand over the medium term on well-being, and we will spend 30.3 billion rand over the medium term on infrastructure in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, we have held the fiscal line, and so we are now in a position to allocate an additional 10.1 billion rand over the medium term in the Western Cape. To push forward, we will spend an additional 6.2 billion rand over the medium term on education. We will spend an additional 2.4 billion rand over the medium term on healthcare. And we will spend an additional 136 million rand over the medium term on social development. And we will spend an additional 2.6 billion rand over the medium term on infrastructure in the Western Cape. We do this so that we give hope to people who do not have jobs, and so that we give hope to people who feel unsafe. We do this so that we give hope to people who struggle to reach their full potential. And we do this so that we give hope to people who do not have access to good schools, good clinics, and good roads in the Western Cape. But above all, we do this so that in the end, we can get up, so that we can get out, so that we can push forward, and so that we can do even better in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, to push forward, we will spend 77.3 billion rand in 2022-23, 75.4 billion rand in 2023-24, and 76.2 billion rand in 2024-25 in the Western Cape. The new Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, was a provincial finance minister and understands the huge pressures on spending building up in provinces like the Western Cape. So we are relieved that after being forced to absorb spending pressures, especially spending pressures resulting from the fight against COVID-19, national government has now stepped up and allocated an additional 6.5 billion rand in provincial equitable share over the medium term to the Western Cape. We have held the fiscal line, relentlessly implementing our fiscal strategy to make sure that every cent counts in the Western Cape. We have implemented expenditure reviews aimed at evaluating the efficiency, the effectiveness, and the performance of programs so that we improve the efficiency of spending. And we have successfully contained spending on compensation of employees by imposing upper limits on spending on compensation and by applying downward pressure on headcount. We would, get this, we would be spending 6 billion rand more per year on compensation of employees if we spent 60.8% of our budget on compensation of employees in the next financial year, like other provinces. Staggeringly, if we spend 68.7% of our budget on compensation of employees like the Limpopo province, we would be spending about 12.1 billion rand more in the next financial year on compensation of employees in the Western Cape. We also spend about 186 million rand per year less on ministerial offices than the average amount spent on ministerial offices by other provinces in South Africa. Staggeringly, we will spend 628 million rand less than the Gauteng province in this financial year on ministerial offices in the Western Cape, which is why we are now in a position to allocate an additional 10.1 billion rand over the medium term in the Western Cape, which includes an additional 6.2 billion rand over the medium term for education, 2.4 billion rand over the medium term to healthcare, 136 million rand over the medium term to social development, and 2.6 billion rand over the medium term to infrastructure in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, we have been locked in a struggle between a virus and a vaccine, but now finally, it seems that the vaccine is winning in the Western Cape. We must not, however, give up now that the end of the struggle between the virus and the vaccine is in sight. We must push forward and remain prepared for a resurgence and indeed even a possible fifth wave of COVID-19 in the Western Cape. And so we have allocated 770 million rand for the health platform, which will be spent on the fight against COVID-19. We have allocated 198 million rand for the rollout of vaccinations, which will be spent on rolling out more vaccinations in our province. We have allocated 17 million rand for communication, which will be spent on our efforts to improve vaccine uptake. And we have allocated 200 million rand to a contingency reserve, which will ensure that we remain flexible in our fight against COVID-19 in the Western Cape. We know, Deputy Speaker, that the weapon of choice in the struggle against COVID-19 is vaccines. And so we encourage people to get vaccinated and to get vaccinated fast so that we can get up, so that we can get out, so that we can push forward and so that we can do even better in the Western Cape. We are, of course, prepared for a possible resurgence, and we are prepared for a possible fifth wave of the pandemic. And so it is imperative now that the national state of disaster be allowed to expire in South Africa. Deputy Speaker, we have been hit hard by the pandemic, but we expect a gradual economic recovery in the Western Cape. Yes, there are significant downside risks, especially with the war in Ukraine, pushing up petrol prices, pushing up food prices, and causing supply chain bottlenecks. There are, however, also green shoots, including a huge investment in the expansion of BioVac, which should give us all hope here in the Western Cape. But the fact is that too many people, especially too many young people, do not have jobs or have given up looking for jobs in the Western Cape. And so to push forward, we will spend 19.6 billion rand over the medium term on boosting economic growth and creating jobs in the Western Cape. We will focus on the ease of doing business, on boosting investment and exports, on supporting small businesses, on scaling up work opportunities, and of course on energy resilience in the Western Cape. To push forward, we will spend 67.4 million rand over the medium term on accelerating the ease of doing business so that we make it easier to start a business or indeed to expand a business. We will spend 387.9 million rand over the medium term on boosting investment, on boosting trade, and on boosting tourism promotion so that we attract investment, expand our trade, and scale up our tourism. We will spend 288.1 million rand over the medium term on expanding the number of work opportunities so that young people get the work experience they need to get their first job in the Western Cape. We do this because people who have jobs get up, can get out, can push forward, and can do even better in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, the fact is that too many people have been victims of crime and do not feel safe in the Western Cape. So to push forward, we will spend 4.4 billion rand over the medium term on improving safety in the Western Cape. To push forward, we will spend 1.1 billion rand over the medium term to support more than 1,000 law enforcement officers to fight crime, especially violent crime in crime hotspots across the province. We will spend 43 million rand over the medium term to support violence prevention and the fight against the causes of crime. And we will spend 18 million rand over the medium term to support area-based teams to fight crime and the causes of crime in crime hotspots across the Western Cape. We do this because people who feel safe can get up. People who feel safe can get out and can push forward and can do even better in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, too many people, especially young people, are not able to reach their full potential in the Western Cape. So to push forward, we will spend 111.3 billion rand over the medium term promoting the well-being of people in the Western Cape. We will do this by investing in strong foundations, by promoting emotional and physical well-being, by meeting basic needs and promoting social cohesion in communities across the Western Cape. So to push forward, we will spend 3.2 billion rand over the medium term on supporting early childhood development and strong foundations. We will spend 3.6 billion over the medium term on well-being by maintaining reasonable teacher-learner ratios and promoting blended learning. We will spend 9.5 billion rand over the medium term on meeting basic needs by focusing on providing food relief, supporting the homeless, and providing more social housing and more shelters for victims of gender-based violence. And we will spend 2.7 billion rand over the medium term promoting social cohesion by ensuring access to public libraries, by ensuring access to sports facilities, and by ensuring access to arts and culture facilities. We do this because people who reach their full potential can get up, can get out, can push forward, and can do even better in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, to push forward, we must support new ways of doing things that improve service delivery and at the same time generate savings in the Western Cape. So we will spend 52.7 million rand over the medium term through the Fiscal Transition Support Facility to support innovation, including developing a mobile client service system for our social workers and digitizing the provincial archives in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, to push forward, we must protect spending on education, on health, and on social development in the Western Cape. We have allocated 83.8 billion rand, including an additional allocation of 6.2 billion rand over the medium term to education in the Western Cape. So that we have more teachers, more teaching assistants, and more classrooms to improve education outcomes in the Western Cape. We have allocated 84 billion, including an additional allocation of 2.4 billion rand over the medium term to healthcare in the Western Cape so that we can fight COVID-19, tackle the backlog in surgeries, and deal with mental illness in the Western Cape. We have allocated 6.9 billion rand, including an additional allocation of 136 million rand over the medium term to social development in the Western Cape so that we respond to homelessness and respond to gender-based violence and provide food relief in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, to push forward, we must invest in infrastructure assets such as schools and clinics and roads in the Western Cape, which is why we will spend 30.3 billion rand over the medium term on infrastructure, and which is why we have mobilized a massive additional 2.6 billion rand to spend on infrastructure here in the Western Cape. We will spend an additional 737.8 million rand over the medium term on education infrastructure so that we can upgrade schools and build new schools in the Western Cape. We will spend an additional 491.5 million rand over the medium term on health infrastructure so that we can upgrade health facilities and build new health facilities in the Western Cape. We will spend an additional 870 million rand over the medium term on roads infrastructure so that we can upgrade roads and build new roads in the Western Cape. The fact is that we have committed a very significant additional 870 million rand to build new roads, to upgrade existing roads and provide long-term certainty on roads infrastructure funding, which of course is so vital for economic growth in the Western Cape. So in the end, we will spend a total of 7 billion rand over the medium term on education infrastructure. We will spend 3.6 billion rand over the medium term on health infrastructure. And we will spend a massive 11.2 billion rand over the medium term on roads infrastructure in the Western Cape. Premier Alan Winde promised a substantial increase in spending on infrastructure, and we have delivered a substantial increase in spending on infrastructure in the Western Cape. We are now pumping more money, significantly more money into infrastructure, with spending on infrastructure now increasing for the first time in a long time in real terms in the Western Cape. We expect spending on existing infrastructure assets to increase over the medium term on average by 4.8% per annum. We expect spending on new infrastructure assets to increase over the medium term on average by 54.2% per annum. And we expect spending on infrastructure assets as a whole to increase over the medium term on average by 6.1% per annum in the Western Cape. To push forward, Deputy Speaker, we must also invest in the preparation of infrastructure projects so that we have a pipeline of shovel-ready infrastructure projects in the Western Cape. We will therefore allocate 87.7 million rand through the project preparation facility to a number of projects, including providing project preparation funding for integrated social housing projects, including Stikland North, Oudtshoorn, and Lulu, and providing project preparation funding for a possible public-private partnership for the Kango Caves, which is one of the top tourism destinations in the Western Cape. To push forward, we must also get infrastructure management systems right in the Western Cape. So we are now preparing to withdraw Provincial Treasury Instruction 16B, which will bring much needed competition to the infrastructure space by ensuring that the Department of Transport and Public Works remains the preferred but not the exclusive implementer of infrastructure projects for the Department of Education and for the Department of Health in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, we all have a role to play in infrastructure delivery, including most importantly, the committees of this Parliament who are responsible for monitoring infrastructure spending in the Western Cape. So to support the committees, to monitor infrastructure spending, we will continue, of course, providing consolidated quarterly reports on infrastructure spending performance to the Budget Committee. But we will begin providing bespoke quarterly reports on infrastructure spending performance to the Standing Committee on Education, to the Standing Committee on Health, and to the Standing Committee on Transport and Public Works. We hope these reports will support the committees to monitor infrastructure spending, and that the committees do not take the easy road. Do not take the easy road, but instead take the hard road and consider the very considerable challenges we face delivering infrastructure in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, to push forward, we must beat load shedding in the Western Cape. The fact is that load shedding, which is estimated to cost the provincial economy 75 million rand per stage per day, is killing our economy in the Western Cape. And so we are delighted. We are delighted that the executive mayor of the city of Cape Town, Jordan Hill-Lewis, is leading a journey by opening the first round of procurement of renewable energy from independent power producers to ensure that we live in the first load shedding free city in South Africa. Deputy Speaker, we will spend 36 million rand over the medium term on the Municipal Energy Resilience Program, which aims to support municipalities and the private sector to generate and to procure and to sell their own power so that we can beat load shedding in the Western Cape. We are focusing on supporting foundational energy studies, including electricity master plans and cost of supply studies, aimed at providing a technical and a financial basis for energy generation, procurement, and trading in municipalities. We are focusing on supporting pioneering municipal energy projects by providing transaction advisory support to ensure that projects are financially, technically, and legally sound ahead of the procurement processes. And we are focusing on supporting wheeling to enable the private sector to buy and to sell and to trade electricity across municipal grids in the Western Cape. We know, of course, that there's no quick fix solution and that it will take time to power up municipalities, but we must do everything we can to beat load shedding in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, we will spend this budget across 5 districts and 30 municipalities in the Western Cape. We will spend 8.7 billion rand in the Cape Winelands district, 3.8 billion rand in the West Coast district, 6.4 billion rand in the Garden Route district, 2.8 billion rand in the Overberg district, 989 million rand in the Central Karoo district, and 54.2 billion rand in the city of Cape Town. To push forward, we must ensure that our municipalities are bright, shining lights on the hill, driving economic growth and job creation in the Western Cape. And so to support our municipalities to drive economic growth, we will soon be launching a new municipal ease of doing business fund, which will allocate about 10 million rand to projects which reduce red tape in municipalities in the Western Cape. To push forward, we must also ensure that our municipalities are bright, shining lights on the hill, championing clean government in the Western Cape. We will, of course, not hesitate to take action if there are allegations of corruption in municipalities in the Western Cape. And so we have allocated an additional 30 million rand over the medium term to strengthen our forensic investigation capability and our legal services capability in the municipal space. We have also implemented a mandatory intervention in terms of Section 139(5)(c) of the Constitution in the form of a financial recovery plan, and will now work to support the Beaufort West municipality to reach a funded budget position within 3 years in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, to push forward, we must remain the most transparent province when it comes to procurement in South Africa. We are the only province to publish monthly and quarterly and annual procurement disclosure reports on COVID-19 related expenditure in the Western Cape. We recently published our 20th, yes, our 20th procurement disclosure report on COVID-19 related expenditure in the Western Cape. To push forward and remain the most transparent province when it comes to procurement, we will now move towards publishing approved procurement plans to provide potential suppliers with information about the opportunities available to supply goods and services to provincial government. We will move towards publishing detailed information of transactions on more commodities as we build our data sets and information processing capabilities to expand the scope of our procurement disclosure reports. And we will move towards implementing our own dashboard system for the disclosure of detailed information on procurement to supplement the system currently utilized by National Treasury. Deputy Speaker, to push forward, we must also improve value for money when it comes to procurement. And so we have allocated 1.5 million rand for a study to evaluate whether we are paying premiums for goods and services, to evaluate why we are paying premiums for goods and services, and to improve, ultimately, value for money when it comes to procurement in the Western Cape. We have also allocated 2 million rand to put systems in place to monitor any premiums paid for commodities which have been designated for localization by national government in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, we live in a world that has been turned upside down, and so the only certainty is uncertainty in South Africa. To mitigate existing and new risks in the future, we have provided a provincial reserve in the amount of 430 million rand in 2022-23, 550.6 million rand in 2023-24, and 338.6 million rand in 2024-25 for unforeseen and unavoidable expenditure in the Western Cape. We have also allocated an additional 6 million rand over the medium term to strengthen the capacity of our fire and rescue services. And we have allocated an additional 160 million rand over the medium term to safeguard our information infrastructure, information systems, and data from cyber attacks in the Western Cape. We must be prepared for existing risks such as drought, flooding, and fire. But we must also be prepared for new risks, such as the risk of cyber attacks in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, We are in a better fiscal position now, but there is a question about how long it will last, because there are, of course, very serious downside risks to the economic outlook in South Africa. We have stagnant economic growth, high inflation, huge fiscal deficits, staggering national debt, and massive debt service costs in South Africa. To compound the problem, the war in the Ukraine will push up inflation, which will put further pressure on households and businesses and governments, which are already under pressure in South Africa, which means that provincial budgets are not increasing in real terms and are unlikely to increase in real terms despite the huge spending pressures building in provinces across South Africa, which is why we have allocated 5.4 million rand to properly understand future fiscal trends so that we can ensure the long-term fiscal sustainability of the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, to push forward, we will spend 19.6 billion rand over the medium term on jobs, and we will do so to give hope to people who do not have jobs. We will spend 4.4 billion rand over the medium term on safety so that we give hope to people who feel unsafe. We will spend 111.3 billion rand over the medium term on well-being so that we give hope to people who struggle to reach their full potential. And we will spend 30.3 billion rand over the medium term on infrastructure so that we give hope to people who do not have access to good schools, to good clinics, and to good roads in the Western Cape. To push forward, we will spend an additional 10.1 billion rand over the medium term. We will spend an additional 6.2 billion rand over the medium term on education, an additional 2.4 billion rand over the medium term on healthcare, an additional 136 million rand over the medium term on social development, and we will spend an additional 2.6 billion rand over the medium term on infrastructure in the Western Cape. And we will do this so that in the end we can get up, so that in the end we can get out, and so that we can push forward, and so that we can do even better in the Western Cape. I would like to thank Premier Alan Winde and my cabinet colleagues for their support, David Savage and Team Finance for all their hard work finalizing the budget, the Honourable Murray Wenger and the Programming Committee members for accommodating the delay in tabling the budget, and to Kaylee Green and the ministerial staff for their grace under pressure as we finalize the budget. And so it gives me great pleasure to table the 2022 overview of provincial revenue and expenditure, the 2022 overview of provincial and municipal infrastructure investment, the 2022 estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure, the 2022 Western Cape Appropriation Bill, the 2022 Provincial Gazette of allocations to municipalities, and of course my speech for discussion and deliberation in the provincial parliament here in the Western Cape. Let me end by saying that today I'm also a proud member of this provincial executive, because this is the only provincial executive in our country to have the courage to take a stand in the face of a terrible war of aggression in support of the people of Ukraine. Premier Alan Winde has been clear that we cannot and we will not remain silent in the face of an international crisis that threatens the very foundations of our liberal international order. He has also been clear that no Russian Federation diplomats will be invited to any events or meetings organized by the Western Cape government. And he has been clear that no Western Cape government ministers or officials will attend any events or meetings with the Russian Federation. The truth is, Deputy Speaker, that this war of aggression has drawn a line down the middle of South Africa. So let us not forget that now more than ever our role is to stand up for freedom when so many stand by in the face of wars of aggression, to stand up for open, diverse and tolerant societies when so many stand by in the face of narrow nationalism, populism and xenophobia.
Speak on a point of order.
For free markets, when so many
Speak on a point of order.
in the
Honourable
face
Minister.
of development plans,
Honourable Minister,
master
please take your
plans,
seat.
job reservation and localization.
Honourable Minister, if you can take your seat. Honourable Brinkhuis, what's your point of order?
Speaker,
I'm here, I'm listening.
Speaker,
Yes.
this is hypocrisy.
Honourable Minister.
Speaker, this is hypocrisy because you denied my request to debate on the Palestinian issue last year, starting that international relations in a national capacity.
All right. Thank you, Honourable Brinkhuis. I note, but it's not a point of order with regards to the substance of Minister Mania's speech. His speech is his right to have that speech under the umbrella of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, and I cannot make a ruling on the integrity of his speech or on the information of his speech. Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister, can you conclude? I think you're on your conclusion anyway, as far as I can see.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The truth is that this war of aggression has drawn a line down the middle of South Africa. So let us not forget that now more than ever our role is to stand up for freedom when so many simply stand by in the face of wars of aggression. To stand up for open, diverse and tolerant societies when so many stand by in the face of narrow nationalism, populism and xenophobia. To stand up for free markets when so many stand by in the face of development plans, master plans, job reservation and localization. And to stand up for compassion and tolerance when so many stand by in the face of intolerance and hate in South Africa. George Bernard Shaw pointed out that the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. So let us push forward and be unreasonable by standing up for freedom, by standing up for open, diverse, tolerant societies, by standing up for the free market and by standing up for compassion and for tolerance in South Africa. Because, Deputy Speaker, because if we do not, nobody else will in South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The Secretary will read the bill a first time.
Point of order. Point of order.
Mr. Secretary, if you can just take your seat. Honourable Dugmore, what's your point of order?
Point of order. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, one could have been tempted to raise the point of relevance in regard to the concluding remarks of the MEC. I would just like to put it on record is that when we speak in this debate and we, for instance, talk about the absolute double standards of not allowing a debate on Palestine during this budget vote, that we will not be called on relevance. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Dagmore. Your points are noted. Thank you,
Deputy
Mr.
Speaker.
Secretary. Honourable Sayed.
On a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker, I want to rise as we has just concluded and is about to table the budget, who has tabled it on Rule 3B pertaining to the current proceedings of the House, and ask you, Deputy Speaker, to rule on the lack of public participation in this entire budget process. There was an advert out for public participation on Friday, and the closing date is today. So only one working day was given to members of the public to participate in this budget process. That must be known, especially going forward, that this is what the DA thinks of the public in terms of input around the budget.
Honourable Syed, thank you very much. I will certainly check in terms of your saying that is that the Western Cape Provincial Parliament only put the ad out on Friday?
Point of order.
Honourable Chief Whip, what's your point of order?
Just a point of clarity. According to my rule book, there is no Rule 3B.
Noted, thank you. But in any event, the advert that you're talking about, we'll certainly investigate that. Thank you very much, Honourable Sayed. There is no intention to deliberately stop the public from being part of the process. Mr. Secretary, will you please read the bill the first time? Mr. Secretary, can you hear me?
Just on another point of order. No, it's a procedural point. Speaker, could I request that from now on, we actually have the speaker present in the House when we have a session like this, which is a hybrid session, because the table cannot quite communicate with, for instance, you, Deputy Speaker, when you are virtual. And I would just like to ask the whips to please look at this, that when we are having a virtual session and in a hybrid form, that the speaker or the deputy speaker is actually physically present, because I don't think it adds to the chairing of the session when the speaker or the presiding officer is not physically present. That's a proposal, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Dagmore. Your point is noted. Can I ask Mr. Secretary to please read the bill the first time?
Western Cape Appropriation Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. In accordance with Rule 188.1, the introductory speech, the bill and papers laid upon the table will be referred to the relevant committees for consideration and report. The Secretary will read the second order of the day.
Introduction and first reading. Western Cape Additional Adjustments Appropriation Bill 2021-2022 financial year B1 2022.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I now recognise the Honourable, the Minister Mania.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to table the Western Cape Additional Adjustments Appropriation Bill and, of course, the 2021 Additional Adjustments Estimates of Provincial Revenue and Expenditure in the Provincial Parliament of the Western Cape, which allocates an additional 43.3 million rand following the reallocation of unspent funds in other provinces to the Provincial Roads Maintenance Grant to be spent this financial year in the Western Cape, which is a credit to the roads branch in the Department of the Transport and Public Works, who are responsible for maintaining our world-class roads infrastructure network in the Western Cape. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. The Secretary will now read the bill a first time.
Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. In accordance with Rule 188.1, the introductory speech, the bill and the papers laid upon the table will be referred to the relevant committees for consideration and report. Honourable members, before we adjourn, I would like to do a ruling on the placards that I note in the House at a future sitting. And once again, please, that we will please consider Rule 59. I will also actually do a ruling on the comments by some of the members regarding a member in our House and see whether it actually requires a ruling or not. And I will revert back in the next sitting. Before I adjourn, I'd also like to remind, please wait, Honourable Dugmore, just 1 second. Before we adjourn, I'd just like to remind members that the Budget Committee will commence at 16 hours, 15 minutes past 4 p.m. this afternoon. Honourable Dugmore, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, we've just heard the MEC make a speech and say that he's tabling certain documents. We've heard him make another announcement, but we have not received anything. We're sitting here in this House, we've checked our emails. We haven't received the budget. We haven't received any of the documents that the MEC is referring to. So could you please explain or ask the MEC just to explain to us when we will actually get copies of these? Because we expected, as you indicated, in a budget committee, but absolutely nothing, not even his speech has been tabled before us or is available.
I will check with
and
the
it
table
happened in
staff.
SOPA as well.
I will check with the table staff where the documents are and straight after the sitting. Thank you very much, Honourable Dugmore. That concludes the business for the House. The House is now adjourned. The Secretary will now cut the meeting and all members will be exited from the sitting. The House is adjourned. I thank you.